All right. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again for another Advice Show debate. Now, last week we had Cynthia G and Alicia Cooper. It was our first time doing it. It had a great response, and that response was very, very good. You guys are pointing out some things that we can do better, and I always take feedback from you guys on anything new that we're doing. Part of our mission here is to grow into something that you could be proud of. That's why when we had changed our company name to Advise Media Network, when you have a network, it's many different things, not just a one trick pony, because most people get bored with a one trick pony. Now, the people that we have here today that's going to debate, hopefully, back and forth is Anthony Brian Logan. He has a channel that's well over 100,000 subscribers. He has a pretty good following. And we have Robert Perkins here as well. We will let those brothers introduce themselves to you. Let's go ahead on the switch screens. And we have our two brothers on the panel. Now, between Anthony, Brian, Logan, as we always do, and our brother Robert Perkins, we want to figure out which one of you guys would want to go first tonight, and if you want to, or we can make a decision.
I'll go.
All right, I like that enthusiasm. All right, so Anthony, could you introduce yourself to the people?
All right. Well, my name is Anthony Brian Logan. I have a channel. I talk about mostly conservative politics, but I talk about a lot of news, some life issues. I do a live show every Wednesday and Saturday called ABL Live. I do a call-in show similar to what my man Robert does. And I'm just here. I've been conservative for about the past 6 years. I used to be on the left, on the far left, and I had a red pill moment. Matter of fact, I did a video about that. That's on my channel, so you can go check that out. But I'm just here to debate the issues. Hopefully we agree more than we disagree. And that's pretty much all I got for now.
All right, so Rob, let people know who you are.
Well, my name is Robert Perkins. I have a channel here on YouTube as well. I do a live show on Wednesdays. My views are to Black empowerment. We're talking about the situation that Black people are in here in America. 3Ks, y'all know how I do. That's mainly me. What I do on my channel is try to empower Black people to have pride in themselves so we can rid ourselves of a lot of the issues going on out here in America by unity.
All right, Rob and Anthony, I definitely want to thank you guys for taking the time for joining us tonight. And tonight's topic, ladies and gentlemen, is Black men. And I stated before we got started that how they're going to answer, they please keep that in mind. And we are speaking about Black men. So are you gentlemen ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Okay, well, remember the time constraints. We'll let you guys know about that. We'll present a question, and you'll be given 2 minutes to answer each person, and then a rebuttal 2 minutes each. You guys understand the rules on that?
Yes, sir.
All righty, here we go. First subtopic, white supremacy. So the term white supremacy has been a mainstream term as of late that many use to acknowledge white control and domination of all things. Many feel this term is something that activists made up to promote a narrative of a victim mentality. Now, do white supremacy exist and why? Anthony?
White supremacy. Now, when you say white supremacy, what I'm thinking about is a definition of it from what I see. The feeling of white people feeling like they're superior and that they have the right to control over everything. Now, as far as that existing, maybe it exists in the minds of people, white people, but I'm not sure that this is a thing that we really got to worry about in society. At one point in time, you had Jim Crow laws. These were laws on the books that said that you have to have certain things for white people only and certain things for Black people only, racial segregation, but that is no longer the case. 2018, the laws are not on the books. So when I hear white supremacy talked about, people say it's institutional, but the institutions that they refer to, those laws aren't there anymore. I think it's just a matter of what people feel on the inside. If you feel like you're superior to somebody, now what somebody else feels and how they think does not control me. It doesn't really just dictate how I move every day. I'm still able to be myself. I'm still able to live. I don't know about how this white supremacy thing existing affects me. Like I said, if it exists in the minds of people, in the hearts of people, but it does not exist as far as a real thing that's in government, that's in society, that's going to stop me from doing anything that I want to do.
All right, Anthony, you got about 40 seconds left, or you want to pass over to Rob?
I want to pass over to Rob.
All right, Rob, you know the question.
I do know the question. It's interesting to hear a black man in this country say that white supremacy does not affect him directly. Speaking that way, which a lot of the conservatives will, they'll speak about themselves as individuals. If you study any amount of the history, even post Jim Crow laws, black people have been subjugated to unfair laws, even with the privatized prison complex that was completely built on the ideology of white supremacy. So to deny that happening, and there are laws that are still in place right now that do affect black people as a whole. There's an ideology. I know he said it's about he said it's just about what's in the hearts of people. Well, what's in the hearts of these people are making these laws. These judges, it's in the hearts of these judges as well that are enforcing the laws, as well as the police that enforce these laws. So it's not so much to me as they are actually supreme beings. And when we say white supremacy, a lot of people say, well, you're putting them over you by even saying the term at all. What it is really is that white people, white in this society, they have made the entire system built and in favor of white people. And that is what the supremacy is about. It's not necessarily that they're better than anybody at all, even though a lot of white people do think they're better than other black people, which is a flaw in a lot of white people's mentality. But that part isn't really true, because white people there are suffering as well. But as long as they can think they're better than black people, they're not even paying attention to the government that's actually subjugating a lot of white people here as well. So I think, again, to hear a black man say, well, it doesn't affect me, is very, problematic for me, because I do feel as though we are looked at as one. No one's going to look at you and say, well, that black man is, not like the other ones. They're going to see you as a black man. And there are laws that are in place that are happening right now, false sentencing being set up, and we aren't protected. And that's what gives, and that's what makes white supremacy what it is. In my personal opinion, we cannot sit here and say it doesn't exist when the laws clearly show that they do exist. You can just look at the prison population itself.
All right, Anthony, you want to do a rebuttal to that?
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Now, we could talk about black people as a whole. We could talk about us rather than saying me. I'm just speaking from my point of view, but we could also talk about us, because it does apply. The way I live my life as a black man, I can take my experience and give it to everybody that's black. I got a few notes here. Now, the laws that are on the books affect everybody. Okay, so when you say that white supremacy is out here writing these laws that's going to disproportionately affect black people, the laws affect everybody, not just black folks. They affect white folks too. So at a certain point, if people are violating the law, the color of the person is really irrelevant when it goes towards actual people that get locked up. Now, there's a lot of us that are in the penitentiary, yes, as far as black folks are concerned, but why is that so? Is it because the laws are against us, or is it because we're violating the law? Nobody's putting the gun to our head 99 times out of 100 and saying you must go and violate that law. It's us choosing to violate the law. Therefore, we volunteering to get into a situation where we might go to jail. It's not the white man behind the tree or under the bed saying, hey, you must do this, so you got to go to the penitentiary because of the laws that we put on the books that affect everybody. And then as far as the police, anybody could be a police officer. Matter of fact, in many urban areas, they're begging for more minority police officers. They're begging for black officers, Hispanic officers, Asian officers, or whatever. Like I said earlier, before we started rolling here, my father was a firefighter 22 years. And he was in charge of recruiting, and he would go out of his way to try and get more black men into the fire department. And he was saying how it's difficult to get black men that really want to do it, that are qualified. A lot of us make bad decisions. We get drug charges on our record, and then if you have a drug crime, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, Puerto Rican, Canyon stripe, you're not going to be able to go into the fire department if you have a felony. But if you are just a regular person, you're not involved with crime like myself. I've never been arrested in my life, even though I know 20 of my friends that are in jail right now. I've never been in those kind of problems. A person like myself would be good for that. Was that a bill for me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you good. All right, Rob, want to rebut that?
I most definitely do, because what he's saying here is that when these laws are built, or when they're written into written as laws, when we're talking about enforcement of laws, when he says that, these laws, if you just don't break the laws, then you'll be fine. Well, white people break the laws at a ridiculous rate, but we have seen this justice system, as far as enforcement, as far as getting sentencing, they directly, disproportionately target black people. And to ignore that, to pardon that because you ain't never been arrested, because you ain't never been to jail, is very disingenuous as a black man to do that, because you have to look at how the laws are enforced. Of course, if a white man breaks a law, it's still against the law. But when it comes to the enforcement of that law, which is what white supremacy actually is, a system, that's what it's about. When it comes to the judge, the jury, the police, when it comes to all forms of enforcement, the laws directly and proportionately lock black men up. Even as he talked about his 20 friends that's been locked up. You ask a white man how many of his friends have been locked up, you talking about maybe one or two. It just to give some idea of how uneven and unfair the law enforcement part is. Enforcing the laws is where white supremacy comes in, is where that actually matters as per white supremacy as a system and as an idea. It's about enforcement. And as a black man, you can look in history and see that laws have been enforced. I mean, at one point it was a law to not drink out of certain water fountains, for God's sakes. You would have black men getting felonies for loitering. White men not gonna get no felony for loitering. White people aren't facing those types of times. And then you look at, even when he mentioned drugs, white people sell drugs more than any black people could possibly ever sell drugs. But if you look at the enforcement, look at where the areas in which the police are circling the block, they aren't in the suburbs, they're down in black areas. So we have to deal with the enforcement of the laws, not just saying, well, black people break laws, because everybody breaks laws. Black people have the laws enforced on them more than anybody else in this country. And to me, to ignore that is just completely unrealistic. I don't know what country Anthony's living in right now.
All right. So that's the first question. We're going to have a follow-up question on white supremacy as well this time around, because you guys will have a good back and forth. I like that. The follow-up question, Anthony, you be first. The FBI in 2006 released a report stating that white supremacists infiltrated law enforcement. White supremacists in law enforcement are called ghost skins by other white supremacist groups. Even with the report from the FBI, law enforcement still have white supremacists in their ranks. Why can't law enforcement weed out white supremacists?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think the main thing, the problem with that would be how you determine who is the white supremacist that's in law enforcement. Because one thing I would say when you look at somebody is judging by their actions. Now, if they're in law enforcement and they're not doing anything that is so-called the behavior of a white supremacist, then how would you be able to identify them? I don't know how you would really be able to do that, especially if they're kind of like incognito, undercover, if they're not public with what they do, if they're not going on YouTube making videos, if they're not posting on internet forums, if they're not on social media with their activity, and if they're not obviously doing anything that would just identify them as that, how would you be able to tell?
Is that all? That's all you're gonna state, or you got more to say?
That's all I got.
You got a minute and 15 seconds to go.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and use it up. Now, white supremacists, like this term, I just want to talk about that right quick in this context. So I won't go too far off the lamb here. White supremacist is a term I hear all the time. I feel like it's used as an excuse, a cop out sometimes for failure of people to determine the path of their own lives. And that's part of the reason why you probably can't find these people, because it's really not even a real thing. You got some people that hate blacks, hate Jews or whatever that are white, but they're so small in number and they're so insignificant, it doesn't even really matter. You might have somebody that calls themselves or that is called a white supremacist in the police force that is a normal person and doesn't even really do anything. Now, I'm not saying that there are some in there that don't do anything, but if they did do something, you'd be able to identify it, but we've not been able to so far. So I'm just kind of confused as to really what that is and how you'd be able to find it.
All right, Anthony, you got 19 seconds, or you can give it over to Rob.
I'll pass over to Rob.
Rob.
Now, Phil, let me make sure that I heard the question properly. You did say the FBI found that there were white supremacists that have infiltrated the police, right?
Yes, that's according to the report, yes.
Okay, so if the FBI, now, again, a lot of would be conservative. They use FBI data for everything else, but when it comes to the FBI found white supremacists law enforcement, and all of a sudden, well, I don't know anything about that. I don't know how they're able to track that. But it's odd to me that people use statistics when it works for their narrative. They use FBI, CDC, they use all that when it works for their narrative. But you just said the FBI found that there were white supremacists in law enforcement, and actually white supremacists found it. White supremacy was actually, well, I won't say white supremacists found it, but I'll say that white supremacist mindsets, that's what the police actually even started off as. So the fact that the FBI found that, black people knew that since before they found it. The FBI finding it just gave us something to say to validate it, because white people will deny this information, but the FBI found the information. So how can you deny that information? That doesn't make any sense to me personally. If they said that they found in white supremacists in the law enforcement, then how can you just say that, well, I don't know how they're tracking white supremacists? When you can look at, they have, let me make sure I'm saying this right, but there are police that can be reported for their actions. You have police that can get reported by the average citizen. Black men could get roughed up and they get reported on that based on discriminatory actions and prejudice actions as well. So to say that, you don't know how to track white supremacists and based on this FBI information, to me is very disingenuous. And then to look at the enforcement and how they act towards black people as far as the enforcement of laws, it shows that they're very, very prejudiced, very discriminatory in their ideologies, in how they treat black people. This is why black people get shot up. This is why we get shot first, and white people get apprehended. They get stunned, they get, tackled and things like this. Black people are being killed. That in itself should show that white supremacists do exist in law enforcement, because the ideas of white supremacists isn't that they're brave, it's that they are living in a situation where they get a little power with a gun and they're able to enforce their ideologies out on the public. And that's what is going on in America. And to deny that doesn't make any sense to me personally as a black man.
All right, Anthony, 2 minutes to rebut that.
All right. Now, the FBI said that they found that white supremacists that infiltrated the police force, but they have not really been able to identify who they are, because you can have evidence that they're there. You may have some white supremacist groups that put rumors out there about certain people infiltrating the police force, but they may not identify the actual person. You might have some random group in Podunk nowhere that says, one of our guys is in your group. They might call somebody with a threat or something like that and say one of our guys is on the inside, but they're not telling you who it is. So if you're not able to identify the exact person, how can you track them? All you have is information that is credible enough to say that they have infiltrated, but you don't know exactly who they are. If you knew who they are, then you'd be able to identify them and remove them. Why would you have somebody in there that is white supremacist and don't remove them? And even if you didn't want to remove them, you would still be able to say, this person has been suspected of being a white supremacist, or this person's under investigation, or this particular police force is under investigation by the federals to see if there is a white supremacist there, because there's been a notification or a tip that somebody in that particular department is a white supremacist. But obviously there's no such thing, because if there was, then you'd be able to find it. Now, as far as the enforcement of laws affecting black people, the reality is, and shout out to everybody in the chat, the reality is that in many of the urban inner city areas, blacks get softer sentences for crimes than white folks. That's the truth. Look at what Freddie Gray had been arrested 25 times before he turned 25. How did he get arrested that many times if we get these big football numbers for drug crimes? Okay. And all of it was drugs, heroin, over and over again. It's a revolving door. One guy had been arrested on one block 80 times, and he wasn't even really in his 40s yet. How do you get arrested that many times if we get these big football numbers? And like I said, I'm gonna just, can I 10 seconds?
10 seconds. Go ahead. Finish your point.
And like I said, I know a lot of guys is in jail right now. I know guys that have done very serious things that get very, very small sentences. I'll leave it at that.
Take it away, Rob.
So now the argument is that black people are being given chances in areas. They're getting light sentences in areas. We do understand and we know that we have Bill Clinton did the 3 strikes rule, and that was specifically against black people. But what we have to look at as well is the fact that I'm not saying you're wrong. I won't say Anthony is wrong when he's saying that black people can get lighter sentences and they'll put you back on the street. But guess what? You're going back into a disenfranchised area. So they're guaranteed that you're going to, good chance, be a repeat offender, because you don't even get the opportunity to go you put back into on the streets, they know they're coming to get you again. It's a game to them. This isn't something that is, the way Anthony speaks about it is like it's real, and it's not real. The way that he frames it, of course they'll let you back out because they know what you're going to do again, and they're going to come get you another time. They'll continue to do that and play that game to keep these prisons full so that private investors in these prisons can get their money. That's what this is all about. The privatized prison complex is a money-making machine. There's no way you can sit here and say that you don't think that white supremacy is real, or there are white supremacists in law enforcement, and we're talking about from police to the judge. It doesn't matter. This exists, and the prison is privatized. And who's inside of it? Mostly black people. Are you saying that black people are the only ones selling drugs? That doesn't make any sense for you to even say that as a black man, because then you're saying, well, everything is fair. Black people are getting a fair shot out here as far as sentencing is involved, as far as law enforcement is involved. And to me, that just doesn't make any sense to say for a black man at all. And you can even if you look at the would-be crack epidemic, look at how that was dealt with. Of course, lock black men up, 3 strikes you out, war against drugs. Well, now it's an opioid crisis out here. White folk out here popping pills and doing all types of drugs, but now we want to give them treatment. We don't want to lock white folk up. And if you can't, how can you not see that? And this is based on their own media. How can you ignore that?
All right, fellas. That was very interesting, that exchange, and very interesting points on both sides. I will say so myself. I was itching to get in there personally. Now, let's move on to the next one, crime. The question here. Crime is a problem that none of us want to deal with. It's being reported that crime is actually going down in the black communities. Crime, according to research, is a result of poverty and lack of job opportunity. So, Anthony, who is responsible for crime in the black community?
Oh, it's people that live in the community that are responsible for the crime. And a big part of the crime thing we probably talk about a little bit later, so I'll save that for then. But it's us. I mean, and then the whole poverty excuse, in my opinion, is kind of a cop out, because I was born in a place called Rand, West Virginia, a very small town in a 95% white state. You're talking about the poorest of the poorest whites you ever seen in your life. People living in RVs, almost like third world conditions, white people now. And you don't see the level of violence that you see in the urban areas, the black areas. It's because of the people that live there. It's a certain culture that we have. And like I said, that could be explained. I'll explain that a little bit later because we got a topic coming up that'll be pretty good. But it's us. It's nobody else but us. We can't blame white supremacy, the white man, because in the particular neighborhoods where we live, it's just us. It's nobody else. Nobody is putting a gun to our head and say, hey, you got to go kill your cousin. You got to go beat your baby mama down. You got to go rob your next door neighbor. You got to go kill this old man down the street for $5. Nobody's saying that you got to do that. It's us that's doing it. If we would have worked together rather than fighting each other all the time in these areas, we'd be better off. But for some reason, I don't know why, maybe somebody can explain it to me, we're just kind of like hell-bent on fighting each other rather than working together. And that's a big part of the crime wave that is sweeping our communities. And nobody can say that I'm telling a lie. You can see the crime statistics. We're half of all the murder victims in the United States. We are also half of all the murderers. Okay, so we are disproportionately killing each other and others in the nation. We're 13% of the population, 52% of all the murderers, and 48% of all the murder victims. That is way too much. We need to stop. That's all I got to say on that. I pass it to Rob.
All right, Rob.
Well, now one thing I will say that Anthony does have at least a little bit of a point. I will say that no one is making black people break laws, making black people kill each other. Nobody's making black people do that. And I'm not going to say that that is the white man making black people do that. That's not even the point about crime. When we look at crime and when we talk about crime and the reason that crimes are committed, we do have to look at poverty, because he said the poverty excuse. I don't know that that's an excuse. It's an actual real situation that can be traced back through the history as to why black people even in the ghettos. Like, why does that situation even exist? There aren't any flourishing businesses for black people to come and make money within the communities, and that was all formulated based on white supremacy. They was pushed black people into the ghetto. So I will say that. Now, again, I won't say that it's, white supremacy's fault that somebody gonna go kill their cousin over a corner, over a color. I won't say that because that's something I speak against myself. I do feel like we can do better about that. But I will not let Anthony off the hook by saying that poverty is an excuse. That's a very real motivator, and that's regardless of race. That will allow, if you look at people that are living in poverty, then you're going to have higher crime rates. And I don't give a damn what race of people it is. It just so happens that black people have a high number of people that are living in poverty, and they're forced to do certain things to make it. And if you have to kill somebody, not saying it's right, but that's what goes on in these areas. And no one's talking about the, would be being educated in these areas. They don't put a whole lot of resources into these areas because they don't have a problem with black people killing each other. That's one thing I do say on my own channel, that the black people, we got to do better about, killing each other. But we have to also look at who made the laws and where these police are, where they are doing their rounds. When they're going to round people up and meeting their quotas, because they have quotas, where are they doing that policing at? It's not happening in Trailer Park.
Anthony, you want to rebut that?
Oh, yes. Now, to his last point about, well, where are the police doing the enforcement? Now, they have to be in the black community doing the enforcement because of the out of control crime. That's where they have to be at. If it were not for the out of control crime that was in the black community, then there would be no need for the police to be there in such full force. If you remove the police force from the black community, you would see crime exponentially skyrocket. That is the reality of it. It's unfortunate that's got to be that way. I don't take pride in saying that, but it's the honest truth. That's why they're there en masse. And as far as poverty being linked to crime, like I was saying earlier, I was born in West Virginia, a very poor state, probably the poorest state in the union, maybe like Mississippi's number one, we're number two in West Virginia. You see the poor white people, and you do not see the violence that you see in the urban black areas. So the poverty excuse can only go so far, because I've seen poverty like the average black person in the inner city cannot understand. You're talking about people with no running water, no electricity, living in RVs, almost third world conditions. However, there's no violence, or it's minimal violence. You don't hear about gangbangers in West Virginia, these country guys, these rednecks killing each other. You do not hear about that. But then you go to the urban black areas, somehow it's always a problem. You go to Oakland, California, LA, Detroit, Philadelphia, New York, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, everywhere you see the same thing. At a certain point, we got to point towards our culture and to what we're doing to each other. The poverty excuse can only go so far, because you see other poor people that are of different races across the country do not have these same issues with violence. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, Rob, you want to rebut that?
I'll say something in short, because again, I'm not. I don't want to make it seem as though I'm trying to make excuses for black people to be out here killing each other. I don't want it to seem that way. But what I will say is we do have to at least look at, when Anthony says you don't hear about it, that doesn't mean it's not happening because you don't hear about it, first and foremost. And I will say that violent crimes, I do understand that violent crimes do happen more in urban areas, but then we have to deal with gangs and things of that nature. I won't say that white poor people are joining gangs and things like that, but they're out here stealing. They're doing whatever they have to do to make or feed their families just as well as anybody else would. So we don't hear about it excuse, because I grew up poor myself, and I saw people do things, and I didn't do those things to make it or anything like that. So I don't want it to seem like I'm making an excuse for that. But what I will say is that when we're talking about what we hear about, I know personally of trailer park areas that are, maybe they're not shooting each other, but they're doing whatever they have to do, whatever hustles, whether legal, illegal, crystal meth houses, and all this shit happening, but ain't no cops coming to raid them. Ain't nobody coming to do anything about it. And I think that we still have to frame the conversation and deal with the fact that whatever meth lab set up, ain't nobody going to bother those meth labs. They come to look for the would-be banger on the corner in the hoods. And I think that as well is why we hear more about would be black on black crime in these areas, because they're not really covering them in the white areas or the poorer white areas.
All right, that's it, Rob?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's ask the follow-up question. Anthony, how can we solve the problem with brothers killing each other in the community?
Oh, man, the best way to go about that would be, it's a few things you could do. The main thing I want to talk about, I don't want to say it now because we got to talk about that later, because it's one of the topics. But aside from what we're going to talk about later, just enforce the law that already exists in the books. Because like I was saying, you got guys that go to the penitentiary for a short amount of time. I know guys that, shout out to occupied dwelling, would get 4 years when they were already a convicted felon that had a violent rap sheet, stuff like that. You got to just make it to where shooting somebody in the black community is not something you could just do and not feel like you're going to go to jail for an extended period of time. Now, some would say we do get a long time for that, but that's not really the case in these inner city areas. That's why you keep seeing the same guys over and over do the same thing. The same menace in your community is always going to be there as long as he's not really getting punished properly for his crimes. And then beyond that, you just got to have a culture of just positivity, of doing the right thing in the black community. Too many of us praise negativity. Prime example, you may have a guy that comes home from the penitentiary. He just did 10 years. What does he get? He get the party, you get strippers, just like the Meek Mill situation. Meek Mill come home from the penitentiary. He gets flown straight to the Sixers game. Now, imagine if you're a young boy in Philadelphia, you seeing something like this. It's like, hey, this is my favorite rapper. He was on drugs and he went to jail. He was able to get past all that, and then they love him. But then when somebody goes to college and they come home, where's the party? Where's the love? Where's the big celebration? It's like nobody cares. We got to shift that whole cultural focus around and focus on things that's going to help us rather than looking at somebody that's kind of at a lower level who we think got done wrong and celebrating that. I think that's how you start, but we're going to talk about more of that as the debate continues.
All right, Anthony. Let's go to Rob. Rob, you got 2 minutes to respond to that. I'll make your point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to me, I do feel as though that we cannot look for law enforcement to be harsher on black people to make black people not kill each other. I do feel as though that's something that we have to instill in our children. We have to instill pride within ourselves because law enforcement don't really give a fuck about black people killing each other. We're doing their job for them. And we have to make our children understand that we are feeding into this system by, using acts of extreme violence. Now, we ain't even talking about fighting. We're talking about murder here. Because the cops, they don't care about that. America doesn't care about black people killing each other. They only use that as a talking point to say, well, black folk violence, so we need to get rid of them. Like, they're a problem. They don't really care that black people are killing each other. That's why when Anthony says, well, the laws, like, they don't care. So you're asking for a system that don't care about black people to come and actually care about black people as far as enforcing laws that will keep murderers off the street. That's not going to happen at all. That hasn't happened yet. It's not going to happen because they don't care about black people killing each other. That's something that we as black people that have black children, even if you're living in areas of poverty, that's something that we have to instill in them, that we don't do this. We don't kill each other. That's not, we don't commit these vile acts of violence toward each other. That's something that we as black people have to instill, not law enforcement, because they themselves they have no problem with black people killing each other on a daily basis. That doesn't bother them. Lock them up, release them, let them kill somebody else. You're doing the job of the white supremacists for them. So I do believe that that is something that black people as a whole, we need to start putting codes. And I talk about codes on my channel as to, we don't treat each other like that. We're not going to go to extreme acts of violence over a corner, over colors, over petty beef. That's not what we do amongst each other. We cannot lean on the white supremacist law enforcement to care enough about black people to want to get the murderers off the streets.
All right, fellas. Y'all getting it in on that. I'm liking that. This is pretty good. Now, let's move to the next one. Education. Now, remember, this is in regards to black men. The school-to-prison pipeline affects many black boys in America. Black boys are disciplined and suspended more than any other group of children. Are black boys targeted in school due to racism or behavior, and why? Anthony.
No, we're not targeted because of behavior, and stuff like that. I'm gonna tell you, a lot of black kids go to majority black schools with black teachers. So how can that be the case when you're around black people being targeted more because you're black? Like me, I went to pretty much 80 to 90% black schools until high school. And even at that point, I went to a majority black school. It was like 55% black versus the 80 to 90% from middle school on back to pre-K, all that kind of stuff. So you will always see us getting in trouble a lot. It wasn't because we were targeted because we're black, because obviously you're in the black area. It doesn't make any sense. What's happening is we have bad home lives. A lot of us, we don't have the tools necessary at home to behave properly. So then we go to school and do the exact same thing we did at home and then we're around our peers who grew up the same way we do at home. So it's just a bunch of bad habits that are worsened by being around other bad habits. That's why we tend to act up in school, and that's why you just oppose it next to whites and Hispanics. It seems like we're being targeted because their home lives are different than ours for whatever the reason may be. Some may say it's because of white privilege. Some may say it's because of racism. Whatever the case may be, the kids are just going to do what they learn at home. That is the main thing about that. Now, as far as even calling the school to prison pipeline, I don't like that, because you're only going to go to prison based on your own choices. The school's not going to do it for you. The school is there to educate you about the curriculum and not there to get you prepared for the penitentiary. If you keep getting in trouble, if you keep going to OSS, ISS, or whatever, that's not the school's fault. That is your fault as the child. And beyond that, it's the parents' fault. Whoever the parents are, whatever they may be, it's really their fault for sending their kids to school unprepared to deal with society.
All right. We got about 5 seconds. Are you done?
I'm done.
All right. Rob.
Well, now in this situation, to me, it is a lot of it is based on race, and when I say the only reason I have to bring race into this is we have to look at the conditions of the schools in these areas. Black areas do not. I mean, we just had a school over in Philadelphia, didn't even have heat in the classroom. Kids were froze out of the classroom. So we have to look at the funding that goes into the black community as far as the schooling is concerned. And to say that most of your teachers were black teachers, I haven't seen that. There's a very low number of black teachers versus white teachers. In any urban area that I was in, I had mostly white teachers. White teachers aren't going to be as patient with black children. Of course, they're going to think that they're being violent. They're going to feel threatened by black children and some of the behaviors that they may exhibit, where a black teacher may be more understanding of those behaviors. Not saying that these black kids get off the hook by acting wild up at school. I don't think that, because I went to school as well. I had knuckleheads in school. We had kids going to OS, getting suspended, ISS, and things of that nature in black schools. There also is a large police presence in black schools as well. So, to me, you have to look at the entire situation, because now you got cops at the schools and they don't have any sympathy for, black children or anything like that. They're trying to do whatever they can really to get that black child out of school, to get them into would be juvies or, prison, jail, whatever it is. They don't have the sympathy that they tend to have for white students in white schools, because they have resources in white schools. We still have to, even when we talk about education, we have to deal with poverty. We have to deal with how focused is your mind going to be if you hungry all up at the school while somebody's trying to tell you to learn something. We have to try to be more understanding of the conditions that black children are living in the ghettos and in the urban areas, and not getting the funding and don't even have the resources to properly teach these black children. We also have to look at those things as well, and to disconnect that from, God damn, my time's up. Let me get 10 seconds. I'll just say that the school to prison pipeline is real. We have to look at the conditions of the schools that are in black communities.
All right, Anthony, you want to rebut that?
Oh, yes, indeed. Now, for anybody that doesn't really understand about where I come from, I was born in West Virginia, but I was raised in Virginia Beach, North Chesapeake, that area. And I lived in pretty much majority black areas my whole life. The city I grew up in when I was very young was Portsmouth, Virginia. You can look it up. It's 55% black, with about 100,000 population. And every school I went to up until high school, when I went to Chesapeake, it was 80 to 90% black, and a lot of my teachers were black. And this whole thing, to me, it doesn't really make any sense. One point I wanted to make is that the funding issue is really irrelevant in my point, because it doesn't really matter how much money you have. You can still behave properly. Go to Africa, you see these schools with no walls, schools with no kind of plumbing, no kind of heat, air, nothing. The kids are there, behave properly, uniforms, the whole nine. Ain't nobody in African schools throwing stuff, trying to fight the teacher, beating the teacher up, choking the teacher. They're sitting there and they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Why? It's because these kids are raised with the proper things from their home. These kids have nothing. They barely even have clothes to wear to school. No shoes, no nothing. No school bus, none of that good stuff we have over here. No TV, no PlayStation, no Xbox, no internet. But yet they still understand how to behave themselves. kids over here in the States are rich compared to those kids in Africa, but the kids in Africa don't have these behavioral problems that many of us seem to have over here. See, I just don't understand. We could say that we're targeted more or whatever, but just look at the behavior that we exhibit. Just study classrooms in Africa versus classrooms here in the States and see how the behavior is. And then you can compare it, and then you can make your own mind up and say, hey, wait a minute, are we just doing the wrong thing? Or is it because we're black? I think that you'll see that we're just doing the wrong thing. And it's not even really the kids' fault. It really just comes from the parents who tell them that. But I'll move on.
Rob, want to rebut that?
I'll say something very quickly. I won't take up the whole time. What I will say is that I do believe that, black children can perform. I am very hard on black parents. Anybody that watches my channel knows that I'm very hard on black parents. But to say that the funding argument is irrelevant I can't fully rock with that, because it is very relevant as to why the funding is uneven. Why is that? What's making that a reality? And to ignore that reality, to me, it's kind of brushing under the rug to go, let's talk about kids in Africa and how they're conducting themselves in their classrooms. We can't sit here and say in this America that's supposed to be for everybody that black children are living or going to school in these poor areas and having these poor schools, and say that we're not even, that doesn't matter, and that's not to be factored in at all. I think that's very disingenuous to even suggest that. But I do believe that our kids can perform at a high level, and that does start at home. I do agree with that, but I don't believe that you can just say that funding doesn't matter and we live in this America that is all fair and all even. I completely disagree with that, completely.
All right, Rob, is that it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, let's do a quick follow-up question. Black women are obtaining degrees at a higher rate than black men. Many black men are graduating with degrees as well, but not at the rate of black women. Do black men value a college education? Anthony.
Oh, man, this is kind of a hard one here, because I'm not necessarily somebody that is a proponent of college all the time for everybody. I think what's happening here is that black women are raised by their mothers to take care of themselves, because maybe they don't have faith in black men, because a lot of us grow up in a single parent households where the mother had to be the sole provider. So they teach their daughters one way or another, just from having the daughter observe her or by outright telling her, you cannot rely on the man, so you got to make sure that you do something for yourself. I think that's kind of where that comes from. And then the men often don't have the father to look up to as a guiding light. I always had my father in my life, so that's why I'm the way I am. I always had him as a guiding light. But a lot of boys don't have that, and they can't really look to their mother, so they're going to end up lost. A lot of times they just try to find their way. Sometimes they get into criminal activity. But as far as college in general, do we value it? I don't know if it's a matter of valuing it or not valuing it. I think it's just how we look at the world differently. A lot of black women tend to look at themselves as having to be the breadwinners, and black men just a lot of times are lost and don't really know where they want to go until a little bit later in life. And sometimes, unfortunately, when they're young, they get caught up in the criminal element, because that a lot of times is like the closest thing to a father that they have, the big homie, the OG, whatever in the neighborhood. They gravitate towards him and look to what he's doing, rather than somebody who is coming home from college, which go back to my earlier point about how we celebrate the dope boy. We celebrate that got us in the penitentiary, rather than the guy who just came home from college. That kind of mentality right there is part of the reason why you have a cycle of boys growing up, seeing the dope boy and trying to emulate him rather than emulating somebody else. But all of that right there wouldn't even be as important if the father was there in the household, like my man Robert. So shout out to him for being the good dad to his kids.
All right, Rob.
Well, to me, black women getting that education, and Anthony made a lot of good points speaking on that, because black women are raised to be independent. You're not going to have a man to be relying on. So you're going to have to go out here, get your education, get you a good job so you can take care of your own household, so you're not having to lean on a man. And a lot of black mothers pass that down because they don't have fathers there to lean on. So they don't teach their daughters. They're not trying to set their daughters up in the same situation. Now with black men, our situation with education is a lot of us, we want to be, a lot of black men are wanting to play sports, be rappers and things of that nature as well. So we're not as focused on education as black women have a tendency to be. A lot of them ain't trying to go play no basketball or trying to be a rapper or anything like that. They're focused on their books. They're focused on that because that's what they're being taught at home. And like Anthony said, a lot of times there aren't black fathers in the home to rear these children in the way that they should go. And again, just like he said, I'm not, a proponent of college, really. I mean, you can go, you can not go, you can go get a degree and still be broke and end up working at a call center somewhere. So there's no guarantee that you're going to get have success based on college. But in the black family, college equals success. That's what I was raised up on. Didn't matter that I didn't like school as much, but to make my family proud, I went on and went to college myself. But that is a very strong point that he made about black women being raised to get it on your own and be able to maintain it on your own. And you can only do that through education, which I do disagree with. I think a lot of us need to be more getting into entrepreneurship, but we are pressured a lot of times as to we're going to uplift our whole family when we go to college. And a lot of black women take that to heart and they go get that education because that's what they've been taught at home.
All right, Rob, is that it or you want to keep going?
Yeah, that's it. That's all I have, brother.
All right. So let's move on to the next topic, which will be black male and female relationships. This is going to be definitely interesting topic here for all of us to hear you guys' responses. So, question. Black men and women have debated what position we as black men should take in relationships. When black men would state their natural position is to lead the household, men and women would be against the idea due to a lack of trust they had for black men. How can black men regain their trust to lead the family? Anthony.
Oh, man, it's not that much you can do when a woman is pretty much set in the way she's going to be. All you can do is just be the best person you can be. That's all you can really do. And then find somebody that's trying to at least open-minded. If the person is still like, I'm an independent woman, hear me roar, at least find somebody that's open-minded enough to hear a different point of view. Because if they're not open-minded, they're going to be that same way until they get to be much later in life, in their 30s and whatnot. Try to get somebody that's on the same page with you. And if you can't, get somebody that's open-minded. Because what can you really do? It's like trying to teach your old dog new tricks. I ain't trying to call nobody your dog, but the phrase still stands. When people are children, when they're young, that is a time to really educate them about how to live their life, about, giving them the proper building blocks for their life, for their mind, shaping them out in the right way from a young age. It's just like trying to learn a foreign language when you get to be 30 years old. It'd be much more difficult to do that versus when you are a child, a baby, and you're learning how to talk for the first time, okay? Because your mind is a blank slate. You have nothing there. The parents are there to imprint certain things upon you, and then the baby also learns from their surroundings by hearing certain things, seeing certain things. But when you get to be 30 years old, your mind is already cluttered. It's much more difficult to really learn that. And when you do learn it, it's going to be a second language, and you have an accent and stuff like that, so it won't really be perfect. So I don't have too much more to say about that. I just say if a woman is not really thinking about trying to, fill into a role or whatever, find somebody that's open-minded and just lead her in the proper direction. Other than that, don't waste your time.
All right, Rob.
Phil, repeat the question for me, brother, so make sure I hear everything that you said. Repeat it one more time for me.
All right, I said black men and women have debated what position we as black men should take in relationships. When black men would state their natural position is to lead the household, men and women would be against the idea due to a lack of trust they have for black men. How can black men regain their trust to lead the family? Okay.
In my personal opinion, I do believe that black men can regain our women's trust by being consistent. And when I say being consistent, I mean being positive, something positive that black women have to look forward to or have to look up to. A lot of black women don't have positive black male images in their lives. So of course they're going to have trust issues. And this is coming from even when they're children. Being raised by their moms, by themselves, a lot of time will affect this. Even hearing their peer groups that don't trust black men. They don't get to see black men protecting black women. Like I feel as though we could do a much better job protecting black women, standing up for black women, so we can regain some trust. Now, some things are learned. Some things you're not going You're not going to be able to convert everyone, but I do think that there are things that we as black men can do to work in the right direction, like not attacking our women, show our women that we do have their back, and that's something that we fail on, that we're failing at a lot of times out here in this society. That's something that we could work towards being, and this is again, but we go back to nature versus nurture, to me, in my opinion, because if you don't see that from young, if like I'm in my household, take care of my children, they see that from young, they're going to have a better idea and better possibilities in their mind of what can happen with a black man. A lot of black women aren't getting that, but there are ways that black men, we could be raising our sons to be something that's honorable, something that women are proud of, and can say that, well, I know he got my back. Right now, it's a toss-up. Black women don't know whether we got their back or not, because too many of us waver on whether we're going to have their back or not, and a lot of them, they're skeptical. And it's based on their experience that they are skeptical. So we can't just belittle their experiences. We're going to have to start being more understanding of their experiences. And black women have to be more understanding of, well, every black man isn't the man you had the experiences with. So here, I'm a good black man. There's something, these are things that we can do as a team. I think as black men, we can do a much better job of being that support system for our women so they can get to see those examples, and that'll regain some of that trust back. Not all of it, but some of it can be gained back. We can work in the right direction.
All right, Anthony, you want to add to that? You want to rebut that?
No, rebuttal. I agree with him.
You agree. All right. Well, if you agree, you ain't got nothing else to say. We'll move on to that follow-up question. Because the follow-up question, I'm pretty sure you have something to say. So let's talk about the follow-up question, because this one is a hot topic in the area of black male to female relationships. We had to add this one. Interracial dating and marriage with a white partner has been a topic of debate and contention in the black community. Some feel interracial dating or marriage show racism is declining. Some feel interracial dating or marriage is harmful to the black community due to racism, children of that union being racially confused, and the white community benefiting from black genetics. Now, the question is interracial dating helpful or harmful to the black community, and why? Anthony.
That's an interesting question. I will say that. I don't know if it's helpful or harmful. It's just a thing that exists. Now, when you're talking about the black community, some people that are in the black community may see the offspring of an interracial relationship as not being black anymore, but sometimes they do. It just depends on the situation. Like Barack Obama was widely seen as the first black president, although he was part Kenyan and part white American. So, I mean, obviously he was seen as somebody black, and a lot of people still say that's it's my president, first black president, all this, that, and the third. But if somebody that they don't like, then sometimes they say, well, he's not really black. And then you get people that are black, they say, oh, you want to trade him? If you want the black delegation trades X, Y, and Z person, they were trying to trade Kanye West, and he my complexion. So I really don't understand that. So as far as black community is concerned, I don't know. I guess it depends on the individual that you're talking about, whoever is an individual that is being questioned that is in the black community, whether that's going to help or hurt. I really don't know if it helps or hurts. What was the other part of the question? I'm sorry, there was a lot there.
I'll just the main part was, is it helpful or harmful, and why?
Yeah, like I said, it's not really helpful or harmful. It's just a thing that exists. People make a big deal out of it, but I don't think it really is. Some say that you can't be in an interracial relationship and help the black community, but I don't really know if that's true. You got people like, what's that, Farrakhan? I don't know if Farrakhan is, I don't know if he's a biracial. I don't think he is, but he's real light skinned. You got somebody that's biracial that looks just like him. And a lot of people love Farrakhan and Malcolm X, who is called Detroit Red. I don't think he's mixed, but a lot of mixed people look just like him as well. So it just kind of gets weird. And then you get people like Sean King and Rachel Dolezal, both of whom are white, but somehow they are considered black. I don't really understand how that works. Like I said, it's all about who certain black folks like and who they don't like. That's pretty much it.
All right, Rob.
Well, the interracial relationships, interracial dating, I think is harmful because of the perception that comes with seeing an interracial couple. Someone that sees an interracial couple, they may believe that we live in a post-racial society. And that ideology, that mentality in itself is harmful to black people completely, because they get real comfortable. And a lot of these black people that are with white people, if you listen to them talk about anything that has to do with the black community, and I won't even deal with the exceptions. There are some exceptions that do or may call themselves being pro-black as they're in their interracial relationships. But when you look at the actual imagery of it, people will think that, racism is gone. Black and white people together, the racism is gone. So I think that narrative or that ideology is what is the most harmful thing that's coming from interracial relationships, because there are some people that believe that you can fight racism by having mixed children. Even though this hasn't been proven throughout history, not one time, racism has not declined because of interracial relationships. But the idea, when people see a Kanye, for example, with Kim Kardashian, they think, oh, well, America, it's all good over there. Black people can be with white people, so everything is okay. But if you actually look at the ideology of many of these black people that are with white people, they don't have any interest in what's going on in the black community. They have grafted themselves into whiteness. And this white woman or white man is a trophy to them that they feel like, well, I'm good. I'm not even black anymore, really, because I got me a white person. I done made it home, so I'm not worried about black people. So I think it's the imagery of it. And if you look at the ideology of people that are in interracial relationships, by and large, the imagery and the ideas is what's harmful, because those black people believe that racism is gone. Everything is good. I got me a white girl, got me a white man. So, what's the problem? What are y'all complaining about? And I think that in itself is very, very, very detrimental in the black community. You cannot fight racism by sitting around having mixed children.
All right, let's go to the next topic, which would be fatherless households. I'm pretty sure Anthony's chomping at the bit at that one.
Yes.
Statistics show black children are born in single-parent households at a rate of more than 70%. In 1960, the rate for single-parent households was 22%. What caused the massive rise in single-parent households, Anthony?
Oh, well, the answer to that is very easy. The welfare state, Lyndon Baines Johnson, we're going to have those N-words voted Democrat for 200 years. And then the whole thing about the welfare system is that they put it into place. You can't have a man in the household if you want to receive these benefits. So a lot of black families chose the benefits over having a nuclear family. That's what happened, because all throughout slavery, after slavery, and up until 1960, when you said we had pretty strong families, even during slavery, when you had the threat of being sold, ripped apart, killed, whatever, you still had nuclear families more than what you have right now. The slavery didn't do what has been happening right now under the past 40 or so years of the Democrat plantation, probably about 50 years, actually. And like I said, they will bring people to your house, social workers. Is there a man living here? They would check to see if there's any man's clothing, if there's any signs of a man living there. And a lot of times, man would just be gone. The kids grow up used to not seeing their father in the house. And then now you have a cycle. The kids grow up, they think this is normal. There's no more shame anymore. When you're talking about children as they grow up, having kids when they get to be 14, 15, no concept of marriage, none of that. Now you have a baby shower for a 15-year-old girl. But back in the day, prior to the 60s, if you would have people in the black community that would see a 15-year-old girl pushing a baby stroller with no husband, she would get cussed out. It would not be acceptable. It'd be totally shameful. But there's no more shame. You got Uncle Sam subsidizing it. That's what's causing the whole thing to be this way. And like I said, you got kids raised up in that environment. It becomes a cycle. They're used to not seeing their father there. They're used to so-called doing things on their own, talking about the woman, that is. They think that the man is optional. He's not necessary. And then the man, oftentimes, by not having a father, he feels like he's optional too. Matter of fact, he's lost. He doesn't know who he is. So he's going to go out here, have a bunch of kids. He might sire like 6, 7, 8 kids and go to the penitentiary, and then cycle continues.
All right, Rob.
Phil, ask the question again so I can make sure I heard it all.
All right, the question was, statistics show that black children are born in single-parent households at a rate of more than 70%. In 1960, the rate for single-parent households was 22%. What caused the massive rise in single-parent households?
Well, back in the 1960s, when actually everything started, when more households started being broke apart, you had integration. I'm not going to say, I know Anthony says that it's welfare, and the system is basically saying that, well, if you don't have a man in the house, you can come get some welfare. But those little $200-300 a month is not replacing a father, and I don't think that black women are necessarily choosing. Not saying all of them, but by and large, I don't think black women are choosing $300 or $600 even, how much ever money. I don't think they're choosing that over having a stable father in the house. Fact of the matter, a lot of these fathers don't even see their own true purpose. When you come up in the 60s, and you also had the draft happening as well. You had black men being shifted off to wars during the Vietnam War. You had a lot of black men being killed, a lot of black women being forced to work and try to make things work on their own. And when the Democrats even came up with the welfare state, they knew that if we imprison these black men, because we got to talk about prison race as well, if we imprison them, they're getting drafted into wars, and a lot of them aren't even taking any type of responsibility whatsoever as to raising these children. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, that's welfare's fault. Well, those are decisions that have been made by many black men, the wrong decisions to leave their children and go have multiple children in multiple households and not be a part of those children's life, forcing women to have nowhere to go. A mom's job is to take care of this child. It don't matter what the situation is. A mom has to be there to take care of this child. So I'm not going to say that it was all welfare that did this. There are other factors that have to be brought in and brought in and mentioned. Just to continue to say it was welfare is disingenuous, and that to me is not what happened, because you have many households where black men are just leaving those households. Then we got to look at, even the crack era. Look at what we're going through. I mean, you got the crack era where you have black men out here running around on crack, doing crack, but many, even, I'm not going to say just black men, but black men out here on drugs. They don't care about the household. They don't care about them kids. The effects of crack cocaine as well, and the crack era caused a lot of these issues, not just welfare.
All right, Anthony, you want to rebut any of that?
Yeah, I think that he has some good points about drugs, but drugs are always around. You had heroin and stuff like that that came up well before the the crack epidemic of the 1980s. That was always around, and you had alcohol. Some people, alcohol is not really a drug, but alcohol has a lot of effects. I've seen people die or almost die due to alcohol, and like I said, heroin as well. I've seen that came long before the crack epidemic. Now, as far as the welfare state, you could say it's not really a lot of money, $200, $300 or whatever, but to some people, it is a lot of money. You'd be surprised. And a lot of these women nowadays feel like, well, it doesn't really matter if I have a husband or not before I have a baby. See, there's no thought process. Back in the day when you had no safety net, you had to have this man be here. If you didn't have a man that was there to help you raise your kids, you'd be lost. You'd be pretty much out back. You had no other recourse. But now you got Uncle Sam, you got WIC, EBT, TANF, you got all kind of churches, you got all kind of non-governmental organizations, you got all kind of programs that will assist you. Even if you become homeless, go to San Francisco, you got these programs that total between 30 and 60 grand per year per homeless person. So there's all kind of resources out there that come as a result of you being in a bad situation without the father being present, that did not exist back in the day. That's why I say in many ways the man has become optional. The thought to be married before you lay down with somebody and produce a baby, that's not even really there anymore. You just do whatever you want to do, because in the back of your mind, and many of these young girls, because let's be real here, a lot of these girls that have babies that are on welfare, they are very young when they have them. So they're not necessarily the best thinkers. You're talking about babies, basically having babies. If you're 14 years old in high school, you're not thinking about long-term investments. You're thinking about, I can get some money right now, more money than I've ever seen in my life, because I come from a poor area and never had a job anyway because I'm too young. So you got to take that into consideration. The welfare state is a very strong thing, but I'll leave it at that.
All right, Rob, want to rebut that?
I'll say a little something on it, because I did agree with the fact when he talked about children having children, and but what I will say is that to say that marriage is automatically a safety net, I think that's a little misleading, because a man can decide to leave 2 weeks after he's married. It doesn't necessarily say that there is a safety net there, but just because you're married, it doesn't mean that man is honorable. That doesn't mean he's ready to be a father. That doesn't mean he's going to be there to provide for his children just because he's married to a woman. That doesn't automatically guarantee that. I will agree with Anthony when he said there are a lot of young women having children and young men making these children, so they don't really have any stock. Like he said, they're not really thinking. They don't have any stock into what they're producing and the situation that they're bringing a child out here into the world. And a lot of these women are having to fend for themselves. But if we look at the welfare state, we have to look at who it helps the most. And it's not black people, like many people like to think. It's not black people that the welfare system is helping the most. It is Caucasians, white folk. That's who's getting the most welfare benefits. And I feel like a lot of times black women are targeted, and they wanted to, they're targeted based on receiving welfare, even though they become the face of welfare, even though they shouldn't be the face of welfare. And I do not believe that marriage automatically guarantees that you're going to have the resources needed to raise a child at all. And I don't think women are choosing welfare over father. I think a lot of these fathers are just leaving, and we have to factor that in as well.
All right, is that it, Rob?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll have, as always, a follow-up question, and Anthony, he kind of sucked because he kind of went into some of my follow-up questions, but I'm going to ask it anyway. There was a time in our community where out-of-wedlock births were viewed as shameful. Many wouldn't want to know their daughter was pregnant without her husband. Fast forward to 2018, and we celebrate with big baby showers as if the child is coming with a loving marriage and 2 parents. Why have we accepted and celebrate single-parent households as the norm in our community? Anthony.
It's because that's how we grow up. That's what you see. If you have never seen anything, if you are a baby, this is your first time on planet Earth. You've never seen anything before. You learn language for the first time. You learn how to walk, learning how to talk. You're learning everything, and you're also learning what's normal and what's not normal according to you. What's culturally acceptable, what's not culturally acceptable. When you see your mother with no father, and she's bringing multiple men in and out of the house, you thinking this is a normal thing. I could just have relations with whoever. And a lot of times you'll see your mother have more kids by different men. It may be 2 or 3 different fathers. And then you see how irresponsible the men are. You think that's normal. And then you see how irresponsible your mother is. You think that's normal. So you grow up doing the exact same thing she does. It becomes a cycle. So that's why you see a big baby shower for a 15-year-old girl who had a baby who doesn't even know who the father is. You're seeing these girls on Maury. We think that's funny. We think that's cool. We want to go on Maury, act up, maybe even get $100. Like, it's a whole big cycle of things that we think are normal that are not normal. This is like a bizarre world. If this were, if you have somebody trying to talk from the 1960s and see what's happening today, like the episode of the Boondocks when you had Martin Luther King that came back and he was seeing what's going on, he was totally shocked because the culture has changed so dramatically, and these kids that are growing up, they think this is the way to be because what else do they have to go on? There is no 1960s culture that exists today. All we have is the current day culture, and all they see is negative things that they're going to reproduce later on in their life because that's all they have to go on. That's the blueprint that they have to work from. I'll leave it at that.
All right, Rob.
Well, what I'll say in this situation is I do agree with some of Anthony's talking points on this because we have to look at nature versus nurture. You have to look at where you're getting your example as to how to exist as a black mother or a black father. We have to look at where we're getting those examples from. Now, we keep talking about the 60s like they were just doing it all good in the 60s. That's one of the problems I do have when we have this conversation is that we act like a lot of these black men, even then, were having side families. Now, what they did back then was just ignore the side family. That's what they did. Even they was married to a black woman. They would have kids out here in the streets, and they would just ignore those I know many older black people that can contend to this narrative because marriage doesn't necessarily guarantee that mistakes won't be made, children won't be had, what they call out of wedlock or bastardized children. But that doesn't stop them from being taken care of. To me, marriage is not a cure-all, a cure-all solution for everything, in my personal opinion. It's not a cure-all. It's really about raising the children, no matter what the situation is. And I do believe that if we focused on that, we wouldn't look so crazy. And it wouldn't seem so out of control because then, now we're focused on raising these kids together as a team, whether we're married, not married, no matter what. Because again, back in the day, they would go have whole side families, full-blown whole side families, and they would just cut them off and ignore them. So I do believe that, again, I agree with some of Anthony's talking points. I do agree with the people seeing their parents and fathers and they're getting their attitudes from them. But to me, it should be more about taking care of the children, whether you're married or not. And I think if we focused on that, I think we see a lot of things change as far as how these children are raised is concerned. And that's all I got on that.
All right, now let's move to the final topic here, marriage. Now remember, this is in relation to black men. Black women constantly complain that black men don't want to get married. They make videos stating other races of men are quicker to marry than black men. why black men seem to not want to get married. Anthony.
Oh man, I'm not sure if that's true or not. I think it's just a matter of the individual. I think some black men may not want to get married, but I think it's not necessarily true all the time. For those who don't want to get married, maybe it's fear, maybe it's because they have never seen a marriage before, so they don't even know how to do it. Like I was talking about earlier, when you grow up in a household where there is no two parents, or you just got your mom, and that's pretty much it, and you see multiple men come in and out, you've never seen commitment in your life before. You have no blueprint upon which to build. So when you're talking about marriage for yourself, you don't know how to do that. You don't even know really how to go about it, and you don't understand the benefits. That's one thing I want to say to Robert's point about marriage not being a panacea. I understand that it's not a panacea, like a cure-all for everything. But at the end of the day, marriage does a lot. Marriage, it creates a bond, not just the ceremony itself, but getting to know somebody deeply, meeting their parents, having a relationship with somebody that's deeper than just, okay, you look good, and then let's lay down, and then let's make a baby on accident. Like, my parents got divorced when I was about 3 or 4, but they were married 4 years before I was born. I was planned. So that bond that they had, they were childhood sweethearts. They met when they were like in high school, and then they got married. My mom was 18, my dad was 21. So when I came along, you already had a lot of bonds between our families. My dad would play with my uncles. My grandmas knew each other. My grandparents knew each other. They would all hang out. They would all, interact with each other in the community. So I have deep family bonds that go way longer before I was born that I can still rely upon today, being myself. So I have a deep family connection. A lot of us don't have that because we don't understand the concept of marriage or what it really means and how that can benefit children when they grow up in the future. Even if the marriage ends in a divorce, you got to have that bond between two people that bring a child into the world. Nowadays, it's just like it's haphazard. You meet somebody in the club and then the baby is born, but that's not how it's supposed to be.
All right, Rob.
I feel as though, just like Anthony said with this one, I think it's a matter of opinion. I know some black men that want to get married. I know some black men that don't want to get married. This is all it is to it. And we have to look at what marriage has become in this society and what we see marriage is in this society. Now, I do believe that good bonds or even great bonds can be created through marriage. But again, it's not automatic. It's not guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed through marriage. I do feel like it's a good avenue if you want to go that avenue. But you have to look at the idea of marriage that people see. You see people getting divorced all the time. They falling out. And if you're seeing people losing half their money and all this other stuff that's going on, I'm not saying the average black person is going through that, but when you see all the negativity that comes with marriage, that makes a lot of black men shy away from it. And to me, that's just a matter of what marriage has become. It's not this building situation that it could be. It could be used for that. It almost works like a merger. That's how in the business world it works. It should work like a merger. But if that's not how it's actually working, a lot of times you have people that are just, getting married just because they think they're supposed to get married, just because, they feeling some love, and then they end up getting divorced. And a lot of black men are shying away from that because they don't want to go through that situation. And a lot of them don't even want to end up doing something that would cause them to have to go through a divorce. So it's kind of that negative stigma that's already on marriage when they see so many divorces happening out here and relationships falling apart, even though people are married. We see a lot of that going on out here, as well as what marriage actually is. We're talking about a certificate here. We're not talking about bonds. Anthony spoke about bonds. I don't need to walk down an aisle, have a reception, or sign no papers to have a bond with somebody and to get to know someone. I think that the fact that we believe that, we've been led to believe that, but I don't think that's true at all. But I do believe that marriage can be an avenue that you can be successful at, but it's not automatic. And I think that black men are shying away from it because they're seeing so many failed marriages and so many people make it and making this bachelor life cool and everything like that as well. So we have to look at what we think about marriage before we even talk about getting married.
Anthony, do you want to respond to that?
Nah, I think I pretty much let that be.
All right, so let's go to the follow-up question, as we always do here. At the end of a marriage or relationship, men and women run to the child support office to start a case. They don't even allow the father to work with them to take care of the child. Once child support get involved, it causes contention with the mother and father. Should black women put black men on child support? Anthony.
Child support, that's something that is a touchy situation, but that goes back to the fact that a lot of women think that the man is not necessary to be in the house. It's just really child support, in my opinion, oftentimes is seen as another government benefit because many times it comes from the state. It comes from the federal government. The state government. You pay the government and the government pays the mother. That's usually how that works. It's like a government benefit. So at the end of the day, sometimes it's necessary, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it could be used as a vindictive tool to get revenge on somebody, to get somebody locked up. I think that the rules behind child support could definitely be overhauled because, I mean, you're getting somebody locked up for child support and how they're going to be able to pay it. I'm not really with the whole putting people in the penitentiary for that. And also some of the amounts are crazy. You know, you got guys that are really struggling to pay child support. However, again, a lot of this would be fixed if we were to fix the black family to begin with. If we look at each other as necessary, if you had marriage as a commitment, not necessarily the ceremony, but a commitment to say, you know, I for you, you for me, and not just, so what can I steal from you? What can I steal from you? This type of thing. You know, what have you done for me? This type of transactional mentality, that type of mentality has to cease. And if it doesn't, a thing like child support is always going to exist, even if not necessarily the child support institution itself. But I'll move on.
All right. So, Rob, I heard you say, ooh. Do you respond?
No, I said that because it's such a touchy, very sensitive subject when you say, well, should black women take black men to court for child support? I personally don't believe that they should, but the thing is, a lot of men won't even try. Now, I do believe it's wrong for a black woman to take a black man to court that's trying because she's bitter. He got a new girlfriend. He done got married or something like that. The bitterness aspect of it, I completely disagree with. I think it gives bitter women too much power to control a man. And, well, now there's jail time that could be connected into this. I do believe that if we were to try more, create bonds before we just laying down having children, whether it's marriage, just like he said, don't have to necessarily be a ceremony, but we need to be creating these bonds and you shouldn't be laying down and having a baby with anybody that you're not friends with first. Not that you met at the club and you got a baby with them. You should be friends first before you're doing this. And then once you have that friendship and uphold that friendship, then that may not be an avenue that she want to take because she's your friend. And black men as well need to try harder. I don't agree with men being taken and put on child support and they're trying. I think that sometimes women get greedy and they're just being vindictive and they're able to use that system. And I think that
was out, Anthony.
All right. Thank y'all for being here. Definitely appreciate it. We got 1,130 in the building. This was a good debate. I figured it would be something that we had some common ground on in certain parts, but certain parts we disagree. So hopefully y'all enjoyed that. You can find me on my website, anthonyblogan.com. That is ANTHONY, the letter B, LOGAN. Also follow me on YouTube. That is youtube.com/alog. That is youtube.com/ALOGE. And that is pretty much it.
All right. So we definitely want to thank the two gentlemen for sure for joining us tonight for the actual debate. We'll put their links to their channels in the description box. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us tonight. I saw some of the people that you guys were, it looked like Rob then came back with us.
Rob's back, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I see you.
Yeah,
I see you.
Yeah, I hear you.
You just need to back up a little bit or move to the side.
right here.
Yeah, move to your right. To your right. Yeah, and just back up a little bit because you zoomed in for real.
Really?
Yeah, for really. But just close out, man. Close out. Tell people who you are and close out.
Well, y'all already know, Team Rob, y'all, I really appreciate everybody came and watched the show. If you want to watch my channel, just put in Robert Perkins on YouTube. And I really appreciate all the support, whether you liked or disliked. I appreciate the dialogue with Anthony. Happy we was able to have a good conversation. Everybody kept a level head, and hopefully people actually learned something from this.
Absolutely.
All right. So like I said before, we want to thank the two gentlemen for joining us. I saw some of you guys making suggestions of people that we possibly could bring. One person y'all suggested I think would be real good if she would come on. I think it would be a pretty good one. Everybody kept mentioning Tree of Logic. I think that would be interesting because we definitely could find someone to retort her. I think that would be very interesting. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let us know what you think about everything tonight, and see